If you're a fan of Portuguese football or have just taken a look at their Super Cup results on your Score app, you might have noticed that the Portuguese Super Cup is called the Supertaça Candido de Oliveira. Apart from being one of the only tournaments in the world to bear the name of a person, the story of Candido de Oliveira is something you'd usually find in your dad's old World War II books. An independent film has already been made in Portugal called Candido, o Espião que veio do futebol, and I'm sorry for the pronunciation, or, in English, Candido, the spy who came from football. So let me take you on a journey to the early 20th century to experience the life of this amazing man so that when Hollywood inevitably makes a movie about him, you can tell all your friends why Liam Hemsworth isn't a good fit for the role. Our story starts at the tail end of the 19th century in Fronteira, a small town in the west of Portugal, where on September 24th, 1896, Candido was born. His early life would be marked by tragedy, however, as before he reached the age of 6, he was to be sadly orphaned. Thus, in 1905, he ended up at Casa, Portugal's biggest orphanage. Founded all the way back in 1780 at the initiative of Maria I, the Queen of Portugal, in order to alleviate the effects of the devastating Lisbon earthquake of 1755, the institution is the biggest educational center in all of Portugal. Casa has always had a strong commitment to sports, and it was there that Candido discovered his athletic abilities alongside his love for football. His talent proved enough for him to join Benfica in 1911, who had been founded by another Casa graduate in Cosme Damião in 1903, and he made his debut for them 3 years later. He would spend 6 years at Benfica before joining some of his fellow Casa graduates in founding a new club, Casa Atlético Clube. The new team immediately went on to defeat Benfica in a regional cup competition, as well as winning the Lisbon Regional Championship and the Lisbon Cup. In 1926, he hung up his boots and was immediately approached by the Portuguese FA to take over as manager, as he had been the captain in Portugal's first ever international game against neighbour Spain. His first major tournament was the 1928 Olympics, where he guided Portugal to a quarter-final appearance before Egypt eliminated them. This would remain Portugal's best finish at a major competition until Eusebio came along in 1966. Throughout his managerial career, he still worked for the post office and wrote for several Lisbon publications. This rather quiet life, spent between postal work, football management and sports journalism, could not, however, escape the turmoil that Europe was undergoing at the time. Since the keep politics out of football brigade was not around back then, de Oliveira decided to play an active part in the fate of his country leading up and during the Second World War. During his lifetime, Candido de Oliveira had seen his country endure numerous hardships and internal upheavals, leading up to the 1910 revolution, which ousted the royal family. The subsequent First Republic was equally weak and presided over a catastrophic and humiliating entry into the First World War. This led to the 1926 military coup d'etat, which established the Ditadura Nacional, or national dictatorship. Just as Adolf Hitler finally abandoned any remains of his dreams of becoming a painter as he gained power in 1933, Portugal got its very own dictator, Antonio de Oliveira Salazar. A conservative nationalist, Salazar used brutal forms of repression through his PIDE secret police to keep his population in line and prevent underground activities such as those by communists from securing a foothold in Portugal. Candido de Oliveira had been a staunch anti-fascist throughout his life, and he expressed his views both publicly and privately on numerous occasions, as he criticized the regimes of Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, and Salazar. His first run-in with the regime had already come during the 30s, when he was questioned by the regime after some of his Belenenses players refused to perform the Nazi salute at a Portugal-Spain game. All throughout his journalism work, he was constantly censored and harassed by the regime as well. His work in the postal system and his high profile in the lofty circles of Lisbon, as well as democratic views, made him an ideal target for the British intelligence during World War II. The British SOE, or Special Operations Executive, was founded after it became clear that the Germans would have the mastery over the European continent in order to support resistance movements around Europe. Another very important activity was surveying the various nominally neutral countries in Europe and trying to prevent their entry on the side of the Germans or facilitate an entry on the Allied side. Whilst Spain was of particular interest under the fascist leadership of Francisco Franco, Portugal was equally important. After Germany's invasion of Poland, Salazar had declared a neutral stance in the war and later signed a non-aggression and neutrality pact with Spain, looking to profit from trade with both factions. The Brits' main concern was the heavily anti-communist stance of the regime, which aligned their ideology with that of Germany in that respect, whilst disavowing the violent nature of Germany's leadership. Candido's main task was to report to the British SOE about the activities of the Portuguese regime, especially regarding the more extremist politicians in Salazar's circle. The so-called Shell network, named that way because most of its employees worked in the oil industry, of which Candido de Oliveira was part, had the task of reporting on any movement of German nationals in Portugal and prepare a possible resistance in the case the right-wing Germanophile elements in Salazar's government got their wish and Portugal joined the Axis. Leading up to 1942, when the war was still going in Germany's favor, the German regime drafted Plan Felix for a possible invasion of the Iberian Peninsula and the seizure of Gibraltar. The British SOE was concerned that the nationalist regimes of Franco and Salazar would not put up much of a fight and join the Axis. All throughout that time, a propaganda battle was unfolding in Portugal, as well as a more covert battle in the political scene for influence between German and British agents. It was in this climate that Candido de Oliveira became Agent H204 and H700, and in his new guise, he organized a network of radio telegraphists who could maintain communications in the case of an invasion, as well as maintaining a network of possible resistance fighters and informants. Any vital German communication going through his post office would also be held back in time for it to be photographed and sent to England, and of course be delayed from reaching its intended target for as much as possible. Ultimately, Salazar managed to maintain a balance between the Anglo-Portuguese alliance, which had existed since 1373, and the need of the Axis for the country's resources. Despite a British embargo, Portugal maintained a contraband network between them and Germany, selling their resources for gold bullion looted from the various occupied peoples of Europe. Candido de Oliveira's ultimate goal of creating a resistance towards Salazar's regime ultimately never came to fruition, as the need did not arise, and he was arrested by the secret police who had been tracking his moves in 1942. He was shipped to Cape Verde, to the Tarrafal concentration camp, a place where the regime had shipped any vocal dissenters since the 30s. In his book, Tarrafal, the Swamp of Death, he describes the camp, located on a peninsula with no drinking water in the most malaria-infested part of the island, where he managed to survive against all the odds. Through the many beatings he sustained at the hands of the regime, he lost most of his teeth, and it would only be in 1945 that he fully regained his freedom, never able to work for the British again as he had been compromised. Later, after his release, he founded arguably Portugal's largest footballing publication, A Bola or The Ball, soon after, and reactivated his old network of anti-fascists. He has been said to have taken part in the build-up to the Mealhada revolt, which ultimately failed in deposing Salazar. During the 50s, he continued his work for A Bola, and it was in 1958, whilst covering the World Cup in Sweden, that he contracted pneumonia, which ultimately killed him. Salazar's hour did not come for 10 more years after that, and he was deposed in 1968 after suffering a stroke. If you stayed this far, I want to thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked it, consider liking and subscribing to see more stories from the world of football, both historical and recent pieces, and I hope to see you next time.